All right, so you know how the NFL offseason always seems to have a way of just throwing these curveballs, like when you least expect it. Well, get ready because a huge one just landed in our laps.
I know, right? It seems like every year there's at least one move that really shakes things up.
Oh, yeah, totally. And this one is definitely going to have people talking.
For sure, and that's exactly why we're here today.
Exactly. We're diving straight into the news that has everyone buzzing.
You know, it
Russell Wilson,
is now set to quarterback.
the New York Giants.
It's a move that seemingly came out of nowhere, and it has massive implications for the Giants, for the rest of the league.
Absolutely. We've got all the latest reports and analysis right here in front of us, and we're going to break it all down.
That's right. We're going to unpack everything for you so you can really understand what this move means.
So let's not waste any time here.
Let's get right to it.
What are the nuts and bolts of this deal? How did this all come together? And what could it mean for the Giants' future? We're going to tackle all of that and more.
Absolutely. So first things first, let's break down the actual agreement itself.
Okay, so the headline is that Russell Wilson has signed a one-year contract with the New York Giants.
1 year, that's interesting right off the bat.
It is, and the guaranteed money on that deal is $10.5 million.
Okay, so not a massive commitment in terms of guaranteed money.
Right, but here's where it gets even more interesting. The contract has the potential to reach a total of $21 million through incentives.
So there's a lot of upside for Wilson if he performs well.
Exactly, and that tells you right there that both sides see this as a prove-it year for him.
A make-or-break season, potentially.
It really could be. Now, think about this for a second.
Yeah.
This move completely changes the landscape of the Giants' quarterback room.
It was already a bit of a question mark heading into the offseason.
Right? They had just signed Jameis Winston.
And of course, they still have Tommy DeVito on the roster.
Exactly. So now you've got three quarterbacks, all with different levels of experience.
And different skill sets.
This is going to be fascinating to watch unfold.
It really is. And you know what else is really interesting about this move?
What's that?
The timing of it all.
Okay. How so?
Well, think about it. We're past the initial frenzy of free agency.
Right. Most of the big names have already signed.
Exactly. So for a move of this magnitude to happen now, it's pretty significant.
It is. And the fact that they included such substantial incentives in the contract tells me that both sides are really motivated to make this work.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're betting on each other in a sense.
I think that's a great way to put it now.
Yeah.
One of the biggest storylines of this entire offseason has been Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, man. Where will he end up? Right.
Everyone wants to know, and for a while there, it seemed like the Giants were a real possibility.
They were right in the mix.
But if you connect the dots here,
Yeah.
this Wilson signing pretty much confirms that Rodgers is not going to New York.
It does, doesn't it? Seems like they've moved on.
It really does, and all the reports now indicate that Rodgers is most likely headed to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
It makes you wonder if the Giants were using Wilson as leverage in case the Rodgers deal fell through.
It's definitely possible. Maybe they were trying to force Rodgers' hand.
Or maybe they just decided that Wilson was a better fit for them all along.
We may never know for sure, but one thing's for certain. This move has major implications for the quarterback landscape in the NFL.
It really does, and it's going to be interesting to see how everything shakes out.
Now, for those who might not be as familiar with Russell Wilson's career, let's take a quick trip down memory lane.
A little refresher course.
Exactly, because this is a guy who has accomplished a lot in the NFL.
He has. We're talking about a decade of dominance with the Seattle Seahawks.
From 2010 to 2021, he was their franchise quarterback.
And he led them to a Super Bowl victory.
He was a 9-time Pro Bowler.
Consistently ranked among the top quarterbacks in the league.
But then things started to change.
Yeah, his last few years in Seattle weren't quite as successful.
And he ended up being traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers last year.
Which brings us to an interesting point.
What's that?
This will actually be his third team in as many seasons.
Wow. You're right. I hadn't even thought about that.
It's definitely a sign that things haven't been going as smoothly for him lately.
So how would you describe his performance with the Steelers last season?
Well, it was a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest.
Okay, in what way?
He started 11 games and led them to a 6-5 record.
So not terrible.
Not great either. His numbers were decent, around 225 passing yards per game, 16 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions.
Solid, but not spectacular.
Right. And the reports suggest that he started the season strong, but then kind of fizzled out towards the end.
Oh, interesting. So what happened?
Well, it's worth remembering that he was dealing with a calf injury early in the season.
Ah, that could definitely explain the dip in performance.
Yeah, it probably affected his mobility and his overall confidence.
Yeah, so it sounds like he wasn't quite himself in Pittsburgh.
It seems that way. But you know what's interesting?
What's that?
Despite the so-called struggles,
Yeah.
the reports still emphasize that Wilson has that special ability to throw a really good deep pass.
Yeah, he's always been known for that.
And that could be a huge asset for the Giants.
Especially when you consider their receiving core.
Exactly. They've got some serious speed on the outside.
Malik Neighbors, Darius Slayton.
Both of those guys can really stretch the field.
And if Wilson can connect with them on those deep routes,
It could be a nightmare for opposing defenses.
it could totally revitalize their offense,
And it could be a major boon for Wilson himself.
giving him a chance to prove that he's still got it.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about those contract specifics again.
Okay, so we know he's guaranteed $10.5 million for 1 year.
Right. And that number could double if he hits certain incentives.
What kind of targets do you think might trigger those incentives?
Well, typically these incentives are tied to individual performance metrics.
Things like passing yards,
Touchdown numbers,
completion percentage.
even things like avoiding sacks.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And then there are usually team-based incentives as well.
Wins, playoff appearances, things like that.
So given the significant difference between the guaranteed amount and the potential maximum,
Yeah.
it's safe to assume that those incentives are pretty ambitious.
Oh, yeah. He's going to have to really perform well to earn that full $21 million.
But you know what? I think he's up for the challenge.
I think so, too. Now, here's something else to consider.
Okay.
The Giants just signed Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal.
Just 4 days before signing Wilson.
It's a curious move, isn't it?
It is a little puzzling.
What do you make of it?
Well, the 2-year commitment to Winston suggested that they saw him as more than just a backup.
Right, potentially someone they could build around
Exactly. But then they go out and sign Wilson to a 1-year deal.
with a much higher guaranteed salary.
It just seems a bit contradictory.
It does, but maybe they're just hedging their bets.
You think so?
It's possible maybe they see Wilson as a short-term solution.
While they continue to evaluate their long-term options at quarterback.
That could be it. Or maybe they just really believe in Winston's potential.
And they want to give him a chance to learn from a veteran like Wilson.
Yeah, that's a good point. It could be a mentorship situation.
Either way, it's a very interesting dynamic,
It is, and it's going to create a lot of competition in that quarterback room.
which could ultimately benefit the team.
That's the hope, right? Iron sharpens iron.
Exactly. So, with all that being said, let's take a look at the updated quarterback depth chart for the Giants.
Okay, so as it stands now,
It looks like Wilson is the clear-cut starter,
followed by Winston.
and then DeVito.
So a lot more veteran presence at the top than we might have expected.
And you know what else I find fascinating about this whole situation?
What's that?
The connection between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They were both with the Steelers last year.
And now they're both projected to be starting quarterbacks in New York.
Fields with the Jets and Wilson with the Giants.
It's a pretty wild coincidence.
It is, and it's a reminder that the NFL is a small world sometimes.
Especially for quarterbacks.
It'll be interesting to see how they both perform in the Big Apple.
Absolutely. Now, let's recap everything we've discussed so far.
Okay, so the big news is that Russell Wilson is officially a New York Giant.
He signed a 1-year deal worth a guaranteed $10.5 million.
With the potential to earn up to $21 million through incentives.
He joins a quarterback room that already includes Jameis Winston and Tommy DeVito.
And this move seems to have shut the door on any possibility of Aaron Rodgers coming to New York.
Now, after a decade of elite play in Seattle,
And a bit of a down year in Pittsburgh.
the Giants are hoping that Wilson can recapture some of that old magic.
And they're banking on his deep throwing ability to give their offense a much-needed spark.
Now, this is where we want the listeners to really engage with this story.
Because there are a lot of different layers to unpack here.
Think about the motivations on all sides.
Wilson is looking to prove that he's still a top-tier quarterback.
The Giants are desperate for a playoff run.
And this move could have major ripple effects throughout the league.
So here's the big question we want you to consider.
What does this short-term investment in a quarterback with Russell Wilson's pedigree really mean for the Giants' future?
Does this mean they're going to shift their approach in the upcoming draft?
Maybe focus on other positions instead of a quarterback.
Or is this simply a stopgap measure while they continue to search for their long-term answer at the most important position in football?
These are all valid questions, and we encourage you to think critically about them.
Because this is a move that could have far-reaching consequences.
And it's just the latest chapter in the ever-evolving saga of the NFL offseason.
So stay tuned, folks, because things are only going to get more interesting from here.
That's for sure. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See ya.